Well, howdy, howdy. Looks like we've got nobody here right now, but a couple of thumbs up. Somebody was here and left. So we'll give them a few minutes to come in. We've got someone here. Say hello in the chat so I know who I'm talking to. We've got a couple of people here. So we'll just begin. About 4 years ago, right about this day, we were having a little wind, and by a little wind, I mean we had 3 days where the winds went between 30 and 70 miles an hour, and probably right in here in the Kishwaukee Valley, we probably topped that by 30 miles per hour a few times. Now, a week ago, 4 years ago today, we erected our greenhouse, or our hoop house. And 3 days ago, 4 years ago, we put the poly on top of the hoop house. And just about 4 years ago to the day, the hoop house was completely destroyed. Now, to put this into perspective, our hoop house at that time was 22 feet wide, and it was 80 feet long and 15 feet tall. Bradley White, welcome, cheers. And the wind picked up the back of that hoop house and laid it over the rest of the hoop house. I went out just prior to that devastation, and as I was running towards it, I saw the back of the hoop house lift up and flip over, and I began cutting the plastic with a knife. I'd paid $375 for the plastic, but it had to be removed. It had to be taken down. And so with a pocket knife, I cut slits into that plastic so that the wind would go through it and wouldn't destroy the rest of the hoops. So we've been able to do a little bit of repair on the purlins. We were able to take everything apart. It took me about 3 years just to decide I wanted to put it back together. I was quite disappointed by it. Country Homestead Preacher, welcome. And you know, it took me a while to get the energy together. You know, I suffer a bit from disappointment just like everybody else. And it was quite a devastating blow. I didn't have the money to buy another piece of plastic to put on the hoop house. I mean, if I'd skipped paying the rent or something else, I probably could have bought it. But so after about 3 years, I decided to take the hoops down. It was hard to get in there and cut the grass, and so some weeds had grown up in there, and it was beginning to be kind of an eyesore. And I took it all down. And then last year, I got involved in August. I got involved with a group of people called Shed Wars. And I think most, if not all of you, are aware of what Shed Wars is. But Shed Wars gave me a little bit of motivation to get back at it. But I also want to share with you, oh, my son's going to come by, so we'll let him pass through. That's Peanut. He helps me with planting and all of that. Have a good night at work. So, Abby's Farm, Abby's Life on the Farm. Welcome to the live. I will. Country Homestead Preacher, I will. Jason Avers. I put off getting a polytunnel for years because I knew the hail would, shred it. Then last year, the missus finally talked me into putting one up. Sure enough, the hail shredded it. Well, we've actually put ours back up. I have not put the plastic on it. I own the plastic. We reduced the size of it to 60 feet, and instead of being 22 feet, I pulled the hoops together a little bit to make it a little taller, but I wanted the sides to be a little bit straighter. So we had some plans of building a little seedling hut in the front, at the north end of the hoop house. And because of the cost of lumber, we're not going to do that, at least not this year. So there's a little bit of a strange arrangement in the front by the front door, but the plants aren't going to know about it. They're not going to notice. So what I've got now is I've got all the hoops up. I've got the main supports for the front and rear bulkhead are down in concrete. Simply Jan, welcome. And I've got a little work to do on the back. I've got to case out where the automatic dampers are going to go for ventilation, and I've got to figure out how I'm going to get the fan mounted in the front. Just some technical details up there. And then I think we'll put the plastic on yet this spring. It's too late to use it really for the main nursery part of it, but I'm building some raised beds inside of it for tomatoes, and I'll probably have, I'm going to work on an arrangement for cucumbers on the one side, and then on the opposite side, I'll probably have a carrot bed this year. Next year, I'll probably have cucumbers on both sides of that. So I'll give you that as an update. But for those of you who just kind of came in, about 4 years ago, right about this time of year, we lost our high tunnel. It was 80 feet long and 22 feet wide, and it was completely destroyed. Well, not completely destroyed, but it was rendered useless by the wind. And it got me to thinking I wanted to give a little positive note today. I've had some issues this week as well that I'll share with you as we go along. But life gets really difficult. And you know what? It's supposed to. It isn't an accident when things are hard, when things are difficult. It's not an accident. It's part of God's plan. You know, it's when times are difficult, when times are hard, that we turn towards God. And that's what this verse sort of promises, or gives us a promise about. So it's Isaiah 40, verse 31. And it says, "But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not be faint." And so I take that kind of as the background for some of the things that I've got going on, both in my life and in my garden. So those of you who were in the live last week, you might know I lost some teeth. And when I went into the dentist, I found out that I have a periodontal disease in my gums. Now, I kind of knew that that was the case. I've been a type 2 diabetic, under moderate control, but not great control, for about 16 years. And fortunately, it's all the top. It's not too many of the bottom that have to come out. But all my top teeth are supposed to come out. So I went in Tuesday to have the dentist remove those teeth and give me a denture, temporary denture, until the swelling went down and all that. And they took my blood pressure. It's amazing how God sometimes works. He causes, or he allows something terrible like tooth decay to send you to a professional who's then going to check your blood pressure. And I was 212 over 110. So if anybody, I mean, that's not quite dead, but it's pretty close. And so I went directly, I suppose, to my general physician, and he's put me on some blood pressure medicine. And I actually am starting to feel better when I didn't feel bad before. But, I was having trouble doing the normal daily chores that I do. Just even walking the garden was difficult. But they that wait upon the Lord will rise up with wings of eagles. They will walk and not be tired, run and not be weary. And yesterday, it rained all day today, but yesterday I was able to hoe, 800 feet of potatoes, both sides, by hand with a hula hoe. So I don't think I could have done that 2 days earlier. I was running out of breath a lot, and I just thought it was because I was old and fat, but that's only part of it. There was also the blood pressure, which is probably caused by being old and fat, or at least by being fat. So we're gonna. I don't know about the diet thing. It's something I've struggled with my whole life. I've never really been real overweight, but I've always been somewhat. So anyway, yes, country homestead preacher. I give the Lord the credit, and I give him all the glory. We had a wedding on Saturday. We married 2 young people. Hello, Willet Grove. We married 2 young folks, and they're starting their lives together. They were supposed to be married a year ago, and COVID got in the way. Now, I'll let you in on the secret because you don't know any of them. They were married a year ago, but we had the celebration of their life and their marriage last Saturday, and I had to do the whole ceremony like this because I didn't want people to see I was missing a tooth. Yeah, Jan, you're right, and it's a lifestyle change that I have tried to make. I do need to eliminate the junk food. Intermittent fasting won't work for me because of the medications that I'm on won't allow that. Yeah, I'm well fed. Well, I'm wrong. I've got a wife that really can cook. So, Homestead Preacher says, strange you should mention this. I'm reading a book called The Bible Diet. I'm not going just with locust and honey. I might eat manna if God sends it along, but that's interesting. If Donnie, if that works out for you, if that's a good book, let me know. I'd be interested in seeing what that's about. So now that Willet Grow is here, I get to say something that I'm glad I can say it. And that is, last week in our live, John revealed something to me that I was not aware of. I guess I was somewhat aware of it. Jason Haver says, this is the year to eat locusts. After you, Jason. After you. But John mentioned that potatoes can be determinate and indeterminate. Well, John, I will tell you that I have not shaved since Saturday, right before the wedding, and I don't intend to touch my face with a razor again anytime soon. It's a little painful. I've only done it a few times in my life, maybe a few stretches, I should say. There was a couple of maybe 5 years where I had to be beardless, but anyway, back to John mentioned that potatoes can be determinate and indeterminate, and I had heard that before somewhere, but I'd never really followed through on it or studied it or looked at it very hard. So last Thursday after the live, I went and I got my Southern Growing Guide, and Mackenzie Lindstrom, welcome. I got my Southern Growing Guide off of my nightstand there, and I looked up the potatoes to see what they had to say about determinate and indeterminate potatoes, and they had nothing to say about it. Now, let me stop for a second. John is absolutely correct. What I'm about to say may sound like I'm saying he's not. That's not the case. John is absolutely correct. Potatoes have the tendency of being, or have the ability, or have the characteristic of being determinate and indeterminate. Sandy Bjorkman, welcome to the live. She's on her way home from work. She'll be with us soon. But if you read commercial potato growing books, or if you talk to commercial potato growers, they will not use that terminology. And so this was very interesting, and it led to some deep dive research on my part, and I learned some pretty cool things. Yes, Mackenzie, well, she's not Scandinavian, but I'm Scandinavian, and she's got my name. So, Joe Serrano, welcome to the live. So the way it works with potatoes, or the way that the terminology is used in commercial growers, is they talk about, well, let me stop for a second before I go into that. If you were to look up seed potatoes in any seed potato catalog, you're not going to see the terms determinate or indeterminate. In fact, I don't even think Johnny's talks about determinate or indeterminate potatoes. That's Johnny's Select Seeds, which is kind of the, I don't, it's sort of the end all be all for seed companies. If you want to get it, there's only maybe a dozen or so things you can't buy from Johnny's. So in Johnny's, it just talks about late season and early season potatoes. And so that didn't do me much good. I looked on Haas Tools. They didn't say anything about determinate or indeterminate that I could find. So I called my seed producer, and he didn't really know what I was talking about, other than to say, well, I've heard that term used. And so if a potato producer whose ancestors started producing potato seed back in the 18 something, if they haven't heard of it, why haven't people heard of it? Well, because they use that term early season, mid season, and late season potatoes. So the potatoes, Steve from the garden, welcome. The potatoes that we would call indeterminate, they're going to be your long season potatoes. So if you're looking to get indeterminate potatoes, russets, majestic blues, Idahos. Of course, you can't grow an Idaho potato unless you live in Idaho. But there's a number of them that are long season potatoes. And so long season potato really is any potato that takes more than 100 days to grow. Shorter season potatoes are going to be Yukon Golds, Gold Rush, Norland Reds. But you've got this group that is in between them. Kennebecs, Pontiac Reds, I think they're called Berkeys, and Fingerlings, all kind of fall into that 80 to 100 day range. So are they indeterminate? Are they determinate? What's the real truth on that? Well, there's a bunch of controversy on this. I would say it's accurate to call them indeterminate potatoes. And for our gardening needs, what we need to know about it. So if you're going to grow in a potato bag, you don't want to use if you're going to grow in a 30-inch tall potato bag, you do not want to use a short season or an early season potato. You don't want to plant what we sometimes refer to as new potatoes. Now, new potato simply means it hasn't been hardened off. It's been picked and it hasn't been allowed to sit in the sun after it was picked, so the skin is still good and soft. And they're not going to last as long as a potato that's been cured, is the term. And so those short season potatoes are usually what we use for new potatoes. And that's going to be your Norland Reds. It's going to be your True Blue or your Majestic Purple. Those are all 60 to 70 day. I think there's even one of the French fingerling potatoes is a 40-day season. Now, what happens if you leave them in the ground longer? Well, so all of our plants, that those dates to maturity or the season length, all of those have a lot of variables. If you get a lot of water, it might change the date. If you get a lot of heat, it might change the date. If you got a lot of cool weather, it might change the date. If you have so those dates are just kind of generalized dates. What you want to look for, though, is the potato will come to a point where, just like an onion, the potato plant itself kind of falls over. And once they begin to fall over, then the nutrient that's stored up in those leaves will shoot down into those potatoes. And you'll have richer tasting potato. You'll have more nutrients in your potatoes. And so that's kind of, God sort of determined that in the potato type itself. And then, of course, man has been manipulating potatoes to get them to be larger yields. And to get a larger yield, you need a longer time in the ground. Now, I also talked to a number of potato farmers. I've got a friend whose brother farms down in Geneseo, Illinois. And then I bought some equipment from a fellow who grows a lot of potatoes in Michigan, and I can't think of, it's just outside Indiana, just across the Indiana border into Michigan. He's about 15 minutes from Michigan City. And I called him up and talked to him about it. And what they said is that you still want to hill your early potatoes. And that the reason in their minds, and this goes back to, there's nothing in the professional growing guides that talks about determinate and indeterminate, because there's a bit of controversy as to whether or not the indeterminate potatoes actually grow in layers, or if they just fill up into that area because they're in the ground longer. And I'm going to pay attention when I dig up my potatoes a little bit more this year. But I do know that if you grow Kennebecs in grow bags, you're not going to get a big yield. But if you grow Pontiac Reds, not Red Norlands, but Pontiac Reds, you can get a larger yield by burying them in the bag. And many years ago, I did that with russet potatoes and planted them in not a grow bag, but in a barrel, a stave barrel that I made. And I kept adding ground, or adding dirt. And then pretty soon, when the plants fell over, I harvested. And with the russets, I had just a ton of potatoes. There was not one that was bigger than the tip of my thumb, but there were plenty of potatoes in there. If you have not listened to John Willett over at Willett Grow, if you have not listened to or watched his video, I suggest, if you're planning on planting potatoes, or if you've already planted potatoes, go over there and watch his video. He plants differently than I do, and I'll point out a couple of differences. There's no right and wrong here in particular. There are benefits to doing it one way over the other way. And, I'm not even going to really go into the benefits. John planted and raised beds. I'm planting in an open field. John placed his potatoes. I believe you planted them. I want to say you planted them 2 inches below the surface, or maybe it was 4. I put mine 4 inches below the surface. I back cover them with dirt. And John was mentioning he's not going to hill them. But one of the things you want to watch out for there is if your spuds come up above the soil, if the tubers are exposed to the sun, and you've got to look hard for that because the skin of the potato kind of blends in with the dirt. But if those tubers, the potatoes themselves, if they're exposed to the sun will cause a nutrient to build up in the exposed area. And I believe I might have this wrong. It's solanaceous. I might be pronouncing that wrong. If anybody knows the right, put it in the comments. I think that's pretty close though. And if you eat that green part of that potato, it will give you a tummy ache. Some people say it's poison, and if you've got arthritis, certain types of arthritis, I think it's rheumatoid arthritis, nightshades in general will give you pain because that solanaceous that's in it will interact with your arthritis. But it's the same thing that causes tomatoes to be green. And tomatoes begin to turn red when they're ripe because they're taking that chemical out towards the end of the ripening. But a lot of people will pick their tomatoes ripe or in the green form, and some people cook them in the green form, and I don't know why you don't get sick from that. I've eaten plenty of green potatoes in my life. It hasn't been a problem. I've eaten plenty of raw potatoes in my life. It hasn't been a problem. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. Just trying to catch up a little bit. I see Jason's got a few comments here that I haven't read. All right, he's talking to somebody else. I'll leave it be. Yes, Mackenzie, Sandy is my wife, and she just walked in the house. But here she is.
Hi, guys.
So, all right. My Aussie Garden says, good day, Sandy. So that's it pretty much for the potatoes. Out in the garden, though, we've got 8 rows, 200 feet long of potatoes. I've got Effies, which are like Yukon Golds. The Effies are more resistant to potato bugs. And I had a real bad problem last year. The last 3 years, we've had a problem with potato bugs, and I just haven't gotten them under control. And this year, we're going to use everything within our power. If I got to use a torch, I'll burn these things till they're dead. But we are going to try using a neonicotinoid pesticide called imidacloprid. I've talked about that quite a bit. We started using it towards the end of the year, and it did kill the potato bugs, but it was too late. Once the flowers come out on your potato plants, you want to watch very carefully for anything. The 7-stripe Colorado potato bug is the main one for us, but you could even get anything that's going to chew on them leaves, any caterpillars, anything like that. As soon as the plant flowers, you know you have tubers growing. And there's a flower for every tuber, and those flowers only stay out for a day. So when you go out and you see them flowered one day and you go out the next day and they're still flowered, those are different flowers. And of course, that's how they pollinate. And so you want to make sure you've got some beneficials in the area. Potatoes flower quite a bit earlier than a lot of the other plants. So it's good to have something that's bringing the beneficials in, so that they'll be there for the potatoes. We have not had a problem with pollination at all. In fact, it's something I've never even studied as regard to potatoes, because just have never had a problem with pollination. Blister beetles. I have never run into them, but I would imagine possibly the Colorado potato beetle might be in that grouping. By the way, the Colorado potato beetle is not native to Colorado, so we don't have to yell at Coloradians. It actually came from overseas, and from what I understand, we never had them until about 5 years ago. I'd never encountered them, and when we got them, I talked to somebody south of us, because that's how it works. All of these bad things are coming up from the south. I think woodcutters, Arkansas woodcutter, and their group, they just don't stay on top of things, and so all of those, the weeds and all the bugs and everything, come up from the south. And you can watch the reports through the ag extensions. You can watch the reports and see that these new things are coming, and they just keep coming back. Bradley White, welcome back. I hope it was not a bad phone call. And that's why I recorded it for you, Bradley. You can go back and watch it just for you. Took care of you. So the other thing that's going on in the garden is the garlic. And I have never seen a harvest of garlic look as nice as this. I've got 4 rows. They're sort of weed-free, fairly weed-free. And they are coming along really, really great. Cutter bees. Is that like a mason bee, Steve? I've got mason bees, and I didn't think I was getting them. I put out some hives, and I have got mason bees going into those hives. So fire ants. I don't think fire ants can take the weather up here. That's the one nice thing about the cold weather. But the only time I've ever encountered anything with fire ants was down in Texas. Yeah, I imagine they'll eventually come up. Steve says, yes, they are related to the mason bee. So, the garlic is looking really good. I think 100%, from what I can tell, of the cloves grew plants, and they're easily that tall. I didn't count the leaves on them, but there's at least 8. So at least 4 on each side for sure. Bradley White, fire ants have been spreading through Australia for the last 15 years or so. I've noticed that on a couple of the Australian gardeners' pages, they talked about fire ants. And I don't want them. I don't want them at all. I'd like to get rid of the Africanized honeybees too, but they don't. Well, the Asian beetles, I think maybe even almost as much as the potato beetles. Pete says I have the striped potato beetles. That's what, when I say Colorado potato beetle, I'm talking about the 7-stripe potato beetle. It's kind of a yellowy looking thing with black stripes on it, and they pop when you squeeze them, and that's about the nicest thing you can do to them. But I think those Asian, what are they called? Not Asian beetles, are they? Anyway.
Metallic ones.
Yeah, they're kind of a metallic-y looking thing, the Asian beetle. They're terrible. And earwigs, although we don't have as many earwigs now as we used to, but they're bad. Pete, have you got a solution for those potato bugs? What do you, I mean, other than peeling them off and squeezing them, it doesn't seem like a whole lot works. Yeah, Japanese beetles, that's what they are. Not, I knew I had that wrong. Thank you, Jan and Steve. You tied. We'll be sending you a prize very soon. Stand by your mailbox. It'll be there. And then the other thing we've got, our shallots are up. They're doing really well. We've got beets that are just peeking up through the ground. They're just starting to come up.
Asparagus.
And we have asparagus. We have delicious asparagus. And Mama's made it in the air fryer, and it was very good. Very good.
Not as good as the oven.
Mama Goose says the oven was better than the air fryer. I don't know that I could actually have told the difference. Yeah, Pete says smash them and cut the leaves off where they lay eggs. Yeah, those kinds of solutions don't work well for me, because if I spend all that time going over all my plants, and I don't know how many plants I've got, probably if you figure, even if you conservatively figure 150 per row, that's 1,200 plants. And how many leaves on each plant? Steve, at the beginning of the live, I talked about the high tunnel, and I don't have the plastic on it, but I do have the plastic. We just, this, we have not had a day where the wind was calm enough to do anything. So we're far enough along in the season now. I might wait another 2 weeks to put the plastic on. Essentially, everything is ready. I've got about 2 hours worth of work, and I could put the plastic on. But so yeah. Bradley White says hello to Mother Goose.
Tell them I said hi.
She's in cooking.
Yeah. Jason Avery wrote about his chickens not eating the bugs either. Neither is ours.
Yeah, our chickens don't touch the Japanese beetles, and they do not touch the potato bugs. I thought they'd at least eat the potato bugs in the larval stage, but they don't. And if I lose this year, if I lose that battle, I don't know. I don't know what I'll do. Potatoes sell really well, so I don't want to not grow potatoes. And it wouldn't really be helpful to grow them in containers, because the potato bugs are going to find them anyway. So one of the things I'm going to do this year, probably in 2 weeks or within the next 2 weeks, I'm going to hill my potatoes. And because of what I learned from Will It Grow, I'm only going to hill them once. And then I'm going to plant beans. I'm going to plant green bush beans and yellow wax beans in my potato fields. And from what I understand, the beans will work as a deterrent to the potato bugs. I don't get the potato bugs until the end of June. Middle to end of June is when they start coming out. And you'll see them on acorn squash, but they don't do any damage on the acorn squash. Stink bugs will get on the acorn squash. You'll see them on eggplant, and they will devastate your eggplant. They'll devastate your tomatoes. I don't know why they don't bother the peppers, but they didn't bother my peppers, and they haven't ever. I think I probably killed all of them before they got there. That's what I'm hoping for, because then maybe I won't be dealing with potato bugs that are in the ground coming out, from my location. I'll only have to deal with the ones that fly over and want to stop in for a snack. Jason said he picked off the bugs and put them into feeders by the handful, but the birds just picked around them. Yeah, the chickens are really good at getting what are they called? They cause Lyme disease. Ticks. They're really good at getting the ticks. We used to get ticks once in a while, and since we've had chickens, I don't think we've seen ticks in years.
They come to the back door and peck on the door.
But now our chickens are pecking on the back door for treats because somebody has fed them at the back door. Garden State Gardener, I didn't see you come in, but I see Jan saying hi. Hello, welcome to the live. I'm going to I'll probably do this again on a tape, but I want to do a shout out for a couple of people that aren't here. I don't do a lot of shout outs because I always assume that if you know me, you came from somebody else's page, and so you know all of them. And I kind of also think that most of the people that I know came through Shed Wars, but that's probably not the case. So I want to shout out Gail's Southern Living. Gail has, I'm surprised she's not here. She's usually here in the lives. But Gail has been doing a lot of interesting things. I think she's actually got 2 different channels that I catch intermittently. But Gail's Southern Living is a good page. You should go over there. She's had some hoop house failure as well. And the other one, and I think most of you know them, but if you have not taken some time to go to the Vineyard Chicks, now I knew who they were and I watched a few of their videos as they came out. I didn't realize how many videos they had. And so I've taken a little bit of time. I really enjoy it. Those 3 girls, they are, well, I'll use John's word. They are fantastic. They've done a lot of interesting parody songs, and they've done some cover songs, and they're just as sweet as can be. So if you haven't been there, go over there. Jason says maybe BT. I haven't tried it, especially for potato bugs yet. So as far as an organic, BT is the only thing that might give you some reprieve against potato bugs. If you spray neem oil on the potato bug in a high enough quantity, that potato bug will die. Insecticidal soap knocks them off the plant, doesn't help much. But BT, I put BT on mine last year, and I think it was just too late. And they just ate and ate and ate. We got maybe 100 pounds of potatoes last year, and we planted 200 pounds. So we didn't even get our seed back. So this year I'm planting, I practice rotation with my potatoes. I'm not as diligent about rotating other things, but potatoes, because of the potato bug, I make sure that I separate them as far as I can. I just do every other year I go to the extreme end of the field. So
ask everybody how their grocery challenge is going.
Oh yeah, I meant to give an update on that. So any of you Shed Warriors who have done the grocery store challenge, I planted some peppers. I can't remember what they were called. Anaconda peppers. And they are coming along very well. I've got probably, I don't know, I'm going to probably separate some of them out soon because they're still small. I'd like to do it while they're small. But I probably have 30 of them, maybe more. But my strawberries, and I think I said this when I planted them, and I think I shared it in my Bittner Farms. Hello, you found me by accident. It was not an accident. It was an act of God. He brought you here. Let's find out why. And let's hang out together until we know. My strawberries have not come up at all. I usually, when I plant strawberries by seed, I expect about 4 weeks before they'll come up. And it does you no good to heat. You want 50-degree soil or better, but like putting them in my germination chamber, it's not going to help. I think it takes a while, and I'm on my 4th week, so we'll see. Give them another week, see if they come up. So Jesus Lord just mentioned something here. She says, if organic is something you aren't particular about, 7 Dust is good for getting rid of a variety of bugs. And 7 is very good. I have used 7 on potato bugs with some success. That's probably the most success I've had is with the 7 Dust. But I'm going to warn you that if you use 7 Dust year after year after year, just like if you use BT year after year after year, you'll kill the pests that are weak enough that the BT or the 7 Dust kills them. But the stronger ones will survive and breed with one another, and you'll create a super strong. And 7 Dust has been around for about 60 years. In fact, I just brought a bunch of stuff back from my father's cabin, and he had a can of 7 Dust. It looked like the way you buy Ajax. It had the round container about that tall with about 9 holes in the top, and you just shake that out on the plants. There was still a little bit left in it. I don't know if I'm going to use it or not, but 7 has been around for so long and has been used by so many people. I'm concerned that I'll use it, but I want to have something in alternate years. So I'm thinking the imidacloprid is what I'm going to use. The thing that was so nice about 7 is that now I never used it as 7 Dust. I always used it as a liquid. But what was nice about 7 is you could spray it on there. You could give it maybe 2 or 3 applications over the course of the year. It's a little expensive, but it did its job. And it was completely harmless to me as an applicator. So imidacloprid, it's got a caution label on it, but I believe it's just caution, which is your least hazardous. And it is a neonicotinoid, which and it's systemic. So 7 Dust was not systemic. 7 Dust, the bugs had to actually have contact with 7. Imidacloprid is systemic, so it gets soaked into the plant, and the chewing bugs that destroy the leaves come along, they chew and they die, and it's great. My apologies to any of the bug people who might be here. I take no joy in killing bugs unless they're near me. So Mackenzie Lindstrom, I'm anti-Monsanto's and anti-DuPont, so I'm particular. Well, you have hit an interesting subject. And there is if you go to the GMO page on my, watch the GMO video in my watch list or whatever on the channel. I have a video put together about that. I will tell you that Monsanto is not a great company. That's no surprise to anybody. Monsanto's is a for-profit company, and that's what they've always been. However, Monsanto's, in creating the product DDT, saved millions upon millions of lives. And DDT is still being used in the same identical form that was outlawed in 1964. It's still being used in Africa, in parts of India, where people are dying from malaria and other insect-borne diseases. So I did a live on that not too long ago. And if you go back on my YouTube page, my YouTube channel, if you go back to a live that was entitled, I think it was entitled Pesticides. It had the word pesticides in the name. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of Monsanto. However, I think there's a lot of people who are out giving information that is totally untrue. There is a rumor, or there's a legend or whatever going around that Monsanto's made the chemicals that were used in Auschwitz. And I will tell you that that was phosgene, and it wasn't created by Monsanto. It was well known, and phosgene is the result of burning fluorocarbons, or hydrofluorocarbons. So the Weekend Gardener Show says hi. First time catching you live. Well, I'm glad to have you here. Happy to have you here. Hit the thumbs up if you're here, and and I appreciate you saying hello. Canadian Proud, get outdoors. Yeah, I shaved. It's not going to happen again anytime soon.
It's Mama Goose's. This is Mama Goose's.
Okay. Mama's got a plate of food ready for herself.
Yeah.
No, I'll put it on the table. I'll eat it. I'm not going to eat it now. Well, you can show it to. This is what's for dinner: salsa, guacamole, ground meat, shredded cheese on a tortilla shell. So, but anyway, yeah, I'm not organic by any stretch of the imagination, and the main reason is we've got about a 5-month season that we can get things done in, and we got one shot at most things. You couldn't back-to-back cabbage here. No, you couldn't. You can have succession planting, but not in the same row. I rarely ever harvest one row and plant something in that row. Sometimes I'll have a row of spinach, and then I can plant into that row of spinach. I plant my beets. Sometimes I'll plant radishes in with my beets, but not successive plantings. And so, if we get a pest, we have to deal with it. And we're selective as to what we use, but actually arsenic is an organic pesticide. It's no longer legal, but it was accepted by the Organic Association up until the federal government made it illegal. So some of the most dangerous, well, no, I won't say that. Some very dangerous chemicals are organic certified. So you just have to know what you're dealing with and be careful with it. So if you're going to use a pesticide or a fertilizer, or if you're going to use a herbicide, you've got to do your due diligence. You've got to study. You've got to take the time to know what you're using, know when to use it, know when to stop using it. For instance, I use clethodim or synthoxidum as a grass killer. I use it pretty much everywhere because grass is tenacious. It's very difficult to get rid of, and it mucks up everything else. So if you can get the grass out, it's a lot easier to cultivate because grass will take your cultivator and shift it right into an aisle. And I lost a few potatoes already this year because as I was cultivating, the grass built up on the sweeps, and it actually started tearing out potatoes. So grass is terrible. You've got to get it out. So I'm starting a new segment on our program, and I'm going to go off with this. But this is called Bad Advice I've Heard on YouTube. And I'm going to say this with respect. I don't think anyone is giving bad advice intentionally, but I saw something that through experience I have learned is a really bad idea. And it's a really bad idea. We were talking about growing apple trees, and they were saying the cheapest way to grow apple trees. And I thought, oh, they're going to talk about growing apples from seed. I need to see that. And hey, John. And so I watched this, and the guy had purchased 15 apple trees from one of the big box stores after the season had passed. So he must have made the video last year, but I just watched it recently, or maybe a few years ago. And he was saying that if you wait until about early August, late July, the stores will be selling a lot of these trees, apple trees, pear trees, peach trees, and so forth. And wherever you are, you might have other trees, including oak trees and maple trees and everything else. Now, with the fruit trees, the reason I think it's a really bad idea to wait until the big box stores put their fruit trees on discount to go in and buy them. I've done a little of this. We've got, I think right now we've got 6 apple trees and 2 pear trees that produce some years. This year they might. We've got flowers on them, so we might get production off of them. But the wind is what really kills us here. But I've planted a lot of apple trees over the years, and I planted some peach trees, and I planted a bunch of pear trees. And we had gotten a bunch of trees from Home Depot. Someone who worked at Home Depot had gotten us about 35, 40 trees, and they were bare root trees. And we planted all of them, and we lost almost all of them. We had a couple of Bradford pears, which is a non-fruit bearing pear tree. We had a few Bradford pears that stuck around, and I've got a silver maple. I don't know why anybody would buy a silver maple at a nursery, but it came with the pile. So I had several silver maples. They caught on. But all of the fruit trees that I planted, they didn't make it. And so I did a little research. And Jason Avers is the expert on this. Wednesday nights, he's got a live. I believe his lives start at 7. Although I'm not sure, but if you go to Jason Avers' YouTube page, you can see what he's got going on. And he's got a lot of information about planting trees. But with fruit trees, if you don't get them in at the right time, if it's too hot, if it's too dry, if it's too close to the freeze, they're not going to make it. And so you're going to spend whatever little bit of money you're going to spend buying these discounted trees, but that's nothing. You're going to take your time. You know, we always used to joke around and say a $25 tree deserves a $75 hole. And so we dig the hole, and we put manure in the hole, and we put some NPK in the hole. And Then we plant the plant, and then we'd backfill it with some peat moss so that the roots could grow out easily, and we'd put some topsoil on the top, and then we'd irrigate it for a while. And the problem is you're spending a lot of money to get these trees to grow and then they don't make it. But if you had bought a good tree to begin with, if you're going to plant a fruit tree, get a good one. So if I come across other bad advice on YouTube, I will point it out. And I'm not trying to, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings or tell somebody they're doing something wrong. But if I see something that I think is really not good, I'm going to point it out. So before I say goodnight, I want to say again, if you have not seen John at Will It Grows video on planting potatoes in raised beds, head over there and watch it.
Yeah, really good.
It's a good video. He also has a video about how he prepared his raised beds. And again, it's not the way I do it, but as I watch it, I think, wow, maybe I can use some of that in my context. You know, it's a little bit different. I'm planting out in a field. I'm trying to use machinery to do as much of it as I can. So any kind of a raised bed, anything like that is not going to work out for me. It makes things more difficult. But well, it's time. It's a little after 8 o'clock, and you all have other places to go, I'm sure. If you haven't done so, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed to the page, please do so. Doesn't cost a penny. So next week, we'll be on at 7 o'clock on Thursday night. Until then, Emitzer Shem, we'll see you again. I'm Chicken Johnny. Eat your vegetables. And look on the brighter side of life. Wait upon the Lord. He'll lift you up on eagle's wings. Amen. Good night, everybody.
Night.